Hi, I'm Kathy Rushing, host of the podcast Committed, the Entrepreneur Marriage. If your middle name is Restless and you identify with words like innovator, dreamer, changemaker, creative, independent, or you are married to an entrepreneur, or heaven help you, you're both entrepreneurs, this podcast is for you. The entrepreneurial journey can be a little wild at times, like uncharted territory. Join me as I talk with others who are at various stages of the entrepreneur process. We'll explore the wisdom and insights they have gained while navigating the ups and downs of the entrepreneur journey. You'll discover that there are many couples who have found ways to thrive in both their marriage and business. I'm joined today by Drew and Sarah Hiss, empty nesters who recently moved to Colorado where two of their adult children live. Drew and Sarah started a payroll and HR technology solutions company from their basement with two little kids. They bootstrapped this business and knew they had to make it work when Sarah lost her job soon after. They added two more kids, and Sarah transitioned to full-time mom as Drew focused on growing Checkdate Solutions. Though there were many challenges, the company was one of Kansas City's top 100 fastest-growing companies for 9 years in a row, and the company was twice named one of the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce Best Businesses. Checkdate Solutions merged with a payroll industry leader in 2008. Drew stepped away from the day-to-day operations, but remained on the board for 8 years. As almost every entrepreneur does, Drew started another venture in 2015 with his business partner, Dan Cooper. Acumen was started with the desire to help business owners leverage the influence of their business platform for eternal impact. That's from their Amazon bio for the book Sharpen, a guidebook for business ownership and adventures in leadership by Dan Cooper and Drew Hiss. Drew and Sarah give us a glimpse into their entrepreneurial journey and insights into ways they have made their marriage a priority. This was take 2 of the interview. We spent a wonderful evening at their new home just before the world shut down. Back in late February was the interview. I did a live interview, and seriously, I don't know what happened to the recording. But Mark tells me now I'm a real podcaster because everyone he listens to has had that happen at least once. I don't know if that's supposed to make me feel better or not, but anyway, that's what happened. I was so relieved that Drew and Sarah agreed to a do-over. Thanks, guys, so much. Now let's get to this interview. Good morning, Drew and Sarah, my guests today from Evergreen, Colorado. How are you guys doing?
Terrific.
Doing great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
For having us on this morning.
Absolutely. I have been looking forward to this so much. Give us a little bit of context before we get into your story. How long have you guys been married? Kids? Where are you living now? Just a little slice of what life looks like currently for you.
Yeah, for sure. You want to do it? You get to speak first because you know I'll speak a lot later.
I know. And I'm sitting here as you're asking that question. It's like, how long has it been? 30 or
that.
31 years? 31 years. That's what I thought. 30. We've been 31 years.
Congratulations.
We have 4 children that are 26, 25, 23, and 21. So yeah. 3
boys and a girl. Princess bringing up the rear.
So she's the last. So 21 to 26. Okay. Gotcha.
And the 26-year-old will be 27 in just mere weeks.
Yeah.
So it's
always changing, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And you guys moved recently. Tell us a little bit about where you are and
we
how.
Raised our family in Kansas City, started a business in Kansas City. Started more than one business in Kansas City. Recently moved to Evergreen, Colorado. Our oldest 2 boys live in Denver. And so we are still very involved with our current business, but we're doing it out of Evergreen. In fact, that is our view out of our window. That is Mount Heaven.
That's so gorgeous.
And we
a
just
couple months
moved
ago,
here.
back when there was still snow.
Right.
Yeah.
We moved here right before the COVID. So then we were kind of housebound for a while, but we're starting to get to know the town of Evergreen slowly.
Yeah.
So
That's really hard when you're brand new and trying to meet people. Yeah. What led
We've had
to
to
you moving?
good fortune of having some connections here, and there's interestingly some quite a bit of cross pollination between the Evergreen community and Kansas City with a variety of different, I call it ministry organizations, and some crossover. It's kind of been fascinating in that. So we've benefited from that. I'll tell you though that we finally went out and ate at a restaurant last night and were served a meal. So it was kind of fun to finally enjoy that virtue of being out here in Evergreen.
Isn't that crazy? The seemingly small things that we will never take for granted again.
Right.
yes.
Yeah. Mark and I went out to a meal in Grand Lake probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was the very first day they had opened for dining in Colorado, and there were all of 3 tables. So we were all spaced out, but it was such a treat. It really was. What brought you guys to Colorado?
I would say that it was a combination of things, not really just any one thing. I would tell you at a high level, it's been a dream of ours. We've traveled out here for decades with our kids, and even before kids, have always enjoyed just vacationing and sightseeing and enjoying the beauty of Colorado, God's creation. It's always been a place where I personally have felt just closer to God when I'm here, and being up in the mountains and the vistas and the magnificence of the creation. And then thirdly, would be the opportunity to move toward an aspirations of launching our business in the Front Range, expanding it in the Front Range area. And then lastly, having a couple of children that live out here with their spouses and beginning their young adult lives is also a treat. We get to see them quite a bit more now, obviously. They're both down in the city. It's been terrific. That's been a great benefit.
Good. Well, welcome to Colorado.
Thank you.
So you've been married 31 years. Tell me a little bit about when you guys first married. Were you in college, or did y'all meet in the nursery at church? Or y'all are so young.
We met our last semester of our senior year of college. We both went to the University of Kansas, and we met in our first date was Friday, December the 13th.
Oh, great.
And it was just love at first sight. But we dated for 3 years before we married. Drew went on to grad school, and I started working, and we dated for 3 years before we got married. But so we were out of college.
Okay. But you met in college. And so in those early conversations, dating and early marriage, what did work look like for you then?
What did work look like?
Like, what did you think about work? Did you at all see yourself as an entrepreneur at that point?
I don't think that was the case so much. I certainly was aspiring to pursue, a vocation. And frankly, the reason I went to grad school was because the particular degree I was pursuing in undergrad was an industry, represented an industry that was in the tank at the time I graduated. So I began to look.
What was that, Drew?
My undergrad was in geology, so I was trying to get into exploration, geology, petroleum, and so forth. And the energy business was just at a low spot in '86. So decided to go ahead and attend grad school for business, got an MBA, which felt like broadened my options at that point. And I think, for work looked like a lot like at that age for me, engaging with a, strong company that I could help grow and be part of a, winning team and make a great contribution and begin to create a lifestyle for Sarah and I and our family. And I think when we really began to deepen in our relationship, it became apparent that we wanted to have a bunch of kids. We wanted to have the option at some point of being able to have a full-time mom on the case and have the option of doing that. And that was a real driver for, I would tell you, for some of the entrepreneurial dreams that manifested subsequent to early days of career pursuits. Okay. So the entrepreneurial bug, I would say, didn't bite until several years after college, and realizing that corporate world really was going to ultimately be a difficult place for us to realize some of the dreams we wanted to realize. And I also felt like, gosh, until I, may not be the most employable individual out there. I'm pretty kind of maverick in a lot of ways. And so,
Drew is not an Indian. He is a chief.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that could be said for a lot of entrepreneurs, don't you? Is that they really are unemployable.
Yeah.
Not that they can't do the work, but they just
Not meant to be a
don't.
terrible or negative connotation. It's just you get that natural disgruntled, what we call it, smoldering discontent, and eventually it kind of pours out as gee, I want to pursue something, a dream on my own, and that took on several different variations in the beginning, and so much of our journey together in that 31 years after the first 4, maybe 5, 6 years has been entrepreneurial and very much, business ownership and trudging through the pros and cons, the challenges and opportunities and virtues and the pitfalls of owning a business.
Yeah. So Sarah, you said you guys married and you both went to work. What were you doing early on, Sarah?
I was working for a video production company. I was a director and producer for corporate videos, training videos, things like that. But I would never say that I was ever a career person. I always saw myself as wanting to be a mom and raising kids. So for me in the beginning, it was just kind of I'm just going to park here and wait and see what happens and contribute some to our income, but not really wanting a big career. That was just never one of my dreams.
Okay.
But it was also a little scary once.
Well, and so, we actually ventured out on our own in those early days, and not too long after I quit my role, resigned from the company I was working with and gave up that I call secure salary, that Sarah's company folded. So we went dual income, essentially dual income, no kids, to no income, 2 kids in this little season of about 2 years. And it was scary. It forced us into some corners we had to come out fighting from, and a lot of scar tissue, a lot of peanut butter jelly, ramen noodles, and tuna casserole. And so, we had to scrum. That's part of the journey, and being within an inch or two of declaring a personal bankruptcy and folding our entrepreneurial venture and closing up shop and moving on with our tail between our legs was all out there. It was all on the table.
And I think it's so good. And part of the reason I want to draw out these stories for our listeners is, especially right now in the middle of this pandemic, and I have heard from several sources that there will be a lot of new entrepreneurs coming out of this time. People that maybe never thought of themselves as entrepreneurs, but maybe they've lost their job or they've realized, you know what, if I could just find something that would even just replace my income, that might be a good thing. So we want to hear all of that story. So what was this first business, this first entrepreneurial venture, once Sarah lost her job or her company closed?
Yeah, I would say it was really a part of our, not because all this could get down in the weeds as we think through some of that, but this particular situation was the ultimate business that we, continued to see flourish long term. But at the time we had really just launched and invested capital, made the strategic decision to give up, a full-time occupation and really, jump off into the deep end, and really anticipated that her company she could, contribute part-time while we got this started, but that her company would still, produce some income through her role there, and that we would be able to have a little bit more of an on-ramp that gave us some lifestyle. And so,
but that business that we kicked off was a payroll processing company,
right,
that we started in our basement. and it was just the two of us. And Drew would be in his boxer shorts making phone calls. And I'm like, I'm over in the corner laughing. How can you take yourself seriously and not get a pair of boxer shorts and a cup of coffee?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
Before
Joe,
the
you
days,
come and do business with us.
yeah.
Dressed
And before the days of Zoom, right?
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. So you had two kids at that point. Did you have a business plan?
Oh yeah.
Or-
We had a
okay.
business
All right.
plan.
Not that much.
We had gone out and raised funds from the SBA. We raised funds from friends and family, and it was just good old bootstrapping. Had nothing to begin with, and started at zero. And we quickly learned the business plan was, a pipe dream, and
It's guidelines.
we were way off estimating the amount of startup time. We were way off estimating the amount of capital required. We were way off estimating the virtue of the solution provider that we had partnered with along technology, and that really turned out to be a fail point that we had to make some modifications and really re-engineer our business in order to survive. So, navigating that technology water was a big part of our on-ramp as well, and understanding what in the market really competed with the large national competitors, and ultimately finding a technology partner that allowed us to perform at a high level for our clients. There's so many, unique stories inside of that are so formative for how we ended up in a place of ultimately being able to really grow and scale the company. Mm-hmm. But that early couple of years was just awful in terms of, that journey. And I look back at it though and go, hey, that still was such a formative part of, what I became as a leader, how much our company was able to flourish in the market, how we were able to build equity value, how we were able to ultimately leverage that business platform for impact in the lives of the people we served as employees, customers, vendors, industry partners out in the market through our association and so forth. And then ultimately it's led, toward a path in the work I engage in today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I have two questions. I hope I can hang on to them.
Sure.
One is, we talk to a lot of young people, young adults that are thinking about having their own business, starting something, but they can't figure out what to start. Now, you went, Drew, from geology to payroll processing. Can you tell us just a little bit about why that? How did you get into that field? Was that your passion, or did it just make sense?
It probably didn't make a lick of sense, frankly. The what was behind it, and was, after I got out of grad school, I had 3 different organizations I worked for. But during that journey of these different jobs, I started to build some knowledge base around, hey, here's a way to, build equity. If I'm going to start a new business, I want to find something that creates residual, repetitive, repeat income. I don't want to start over at zero every year, if you will. How do I build a book of business that we continue to build on each year? And you're accumulating. You're not just, literally kind of at the beginning of every year, you're starting at zero. And
mm-hmm.
And so that whole idea of recurring and repeat income and building a base of customers that, would be a book of business that would you could continue to build on year after year after year, assuming you provided good services and value and responsiveness and accuracy and all those things. And that was what drove us toward that particular business that we ultimately selected to dive into. Was I passionate about being in the outsourced human capital management technology space? No. I would tell you it's kind of ironic that Sarah and I ended up in that, because neither of us are detail-oriented people. We don't love spreadsheets. We don't have training as accountants. There's nothing about the two of us that would make anybody go, yep, you guys would be great at the outsourced. It was an absolute disaster from that standpoint. But I think that's where God comes in and just starts laughing. And, who's to say what you're good or not good at? what we became passionate about in that journey was providing exceptional customer service experience. And that's what became our blue ocean in our industry. And so I love running after blue ocean opportunities. I love running after areas that, are being underserved by potentially large national customer or large national providers. I do think finding something you're passionate about certainly helps. And what we ultimately over time became entrenched with was this idea around customer experience being the differentiator. And so that drove how we went to market. It drove the types of solutions we rolled out to the customers we served and the types of people we hired to put on our team. And so it really became the heartbeat of our organization. And it allowed us to be one of the top growth companies in our region of the country 9 consecutive years in one of the rating services, and ultimately one of the top players in our industry nationally. And, there's more to that story certainly, but
sure. We'll dig in.
The essence of this is more about the marriage piece and how that was a big part of, building our company as well.
Yes. Well, and what I really look for is the intersection, so there's the business that's starting, growing. And then if you're married, you cannot divorce yourself from that business. And so let's go back to where you are with 2 little kids, Sarah.
Uh-huh.
Your company has folded. Drew has already launched the company at this point?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to stay sane, and how did you guys grow your marriage in what could have blown some marriages apart?
Right. Well, first I will say that when Drew decided he wanted to pursue starting a business, it terrified me. I wanted nothing to do with it. I have not an entrepreneurial bone in my body, at least at that time. And I thought, what are you doing? But I thought, well, I still have my paycheck. That's fine. I can at least pay our house payment. I could go get another part-time job. We'll figure it out. So he started. And then right after I lost my job because they sold and I was duplication, they were like, we don't need you. So then I was really terrified, but I just decided, you know what, now we've got to make it work or we're going to lose everything. And I thought, at the time we were 30, young 30s. And I thought, well, if we lose everything, he could always go back and get a regular job, and we'll be okay. So I just thought, who cares? We don't have that much stuff. If we lose it, we lose it. But I also had in the back of my mind, I've got to help him. We've got to make it work. And I think we learned that we really work together well. We get along. At least we did back then. Maybe not so much.
No, actually, over the years, found that working together actually was a good way to have a more transparent level of communication. And we knew what was going on, so we didn't have to sit down at the dinner table and try to go through the entire chronological order of the day and unpack everything that happened and tell all the nuanced stories. And, oh, so-and-so did this. And we just kind of were there already, so that when we, sort of turned off the business for the night, we could engage with kids and, enjoy our evenings together. Obviously, with the business in the basement at that point, there was a lot of, I got to go to the basement later kind of thing. But, I would say too, Kathy, back to your question, is just those were formative days around the formation of our faith together. Our faith with Christ, but then our faith together as a married couple, and the bumpy roads of entrepreneurism certainly brought us to our knees. Mm-hmm. And we made church a priority. We made dating a priority. We made praying together a priority during that season, and it still is. That to me has been the essence of what's allowed us to maintain a healthy marriage, is praying together. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's just such an important part of not letting the sun go down on your anger and having to let go of your pride, which is what, is ultimately the source of that anger. And And I've had to eat a lot of crow at about 11 o'clock at night and allow God to just, release it and release it from my soul and not harbor this bitterness that might have built up during the, period of our day or moment in the evening. And, ultimately we had 4 kids, in addition to the 2 older ones that came along when we first started. So, it's just a constant battle of activity and priorities and and trying to make all that work. And but the priority was always really around how to keep our marriage healthy and make our marriage our priority, both in relationship sense between us, but also in a prayerful relationship with God. And felt like that if we do that the other things in our life will fit in, they'll work out according to his plan in time.
Was that an intentional decision that you made about your marriage, or was there something that kind of made you open your eyes and go, we better pay attention to this?
I think it was just that at first we were both so involved in the business and so busy. And then after the other 2 kids came, I stepped out of the business. And so Drew was then just in there full time, and he would come home and he didn't want to talk about what it, but I knew everybody there. And so I would ask quite, well, how's so-and-so doing? What's going on here? What's happening? And how was and he's like, I don't want to talk about it. And so we kind of, I think, started to feel that we were kind of separated. We weren't as close as we were when we were both working full time together. So then we were like, okay, we need to make our relationship a priority. So yeah, it was a conscious decision we're going to go have a date night every week. Every quarter, we're going to leave town. Not even leave town. Maybe sometimes it'd be a staycation, but no kids, just the 2 of us away for at least 24 or 48 hours or more. And then, and I don't even know where the prayer thing, did somebody suggest that? But we just started every night, we're going to take time out and we're going to pray before we go to bed together. And so it was just really a conscious, we need to make sure we are a priority, because if our relationship isn't working, the business isn't probably going to fail. Our children are going to struggle. So, yeah. And I give all of the credit for that to Drew, because he really was like, this is what we're going to do.
Well, it's just as a new believer in our late 20s, early 30s, because really our faith became an important part of our lives by virtue of what I would call the failures of commerce and the failures in our business. And that's what certainly drove me to my knees and ultimately surrendering my life to Christ. And then it's just as part of that growth and maturing as a follower, seeing, I think just trying to be wise and observe what's going on around the world, around what going on with peers, going on with what kind of teaching and coaching we were receiving around how to have a healthy marriage, and those elements of growth. Just like, well, how can we continue to walk out our faith and not really engage in the activity of it, in the discipline of praying together and quiet time with the Lord every day, and those things. I'm not perfect. Sarah's not perfect. None of us are. We're all sinners, right? And yet, if we come back and make God the source and the center, it certainly enhances the opportunity for our relationship to be bonded so tightly together and be protected with this, hedge of protection that we can, avoid the evil one's attempt to divide and split relationships.
Yeah, I don't have statistics, but I think it's pretty well accepted that there are more. What am I trying to say? There's a higher percentage of divorces amongst entrepreneurs, and I think some of it goes back to what you're saying about entrepreneurs tend to be very driven. I can do this. It's up to me. It's all up to me. And so they push and push and push, sometimes, many times, at the expense of their marriage, their family. And that's part of what launched this podcast, really, is to help couples see that you don't have to sacrifice your marriage or your family for the sake of the business. I mean, what do you have if you have lost all of that? Who cares if you have a great big business, right? So,
well, sadly, you see over the last 3-4 months, a situation that nobody has any control over come in and throw a left hook into somebody's gut around this business that maybe they poured their entire life into, and many business
and
owners
identity
are being forced to shutter the business or make severe cuts. Certainly, it's affected the wealth of many people. Most entrepreneurs probably have a big percentage, if not all of their wealth, tied up in the equity of that business.
Right.
And, when the business craters and falls, what do you got left? And so it kind of, I think, shines a light on, at the end of the day, what's really important in this life. Your business is a vital part of, providing a lifestyle and a way to engage your passion into something you love to do. And yet, it's not worth sacrificing the most important things in life, which are your faith and your marriage and your relationship with your kids and the legacy ultimately of your family. And that's one thing that's, sad to see so many businesses being negatively affected, because, it's not just the business that's being lost here, that there's probably a lot of other carnage going on a ripple effect that relates to those relationships and so forth. It's really sad.
Yeah, and who knows yet how it's going to impact marriages and the family. I think marriages that have some cracks in it. I read an article recently about the divorce rate going up or filings 25% in China once they reopened back in whenever that was, March. They were reopening a little bit when we were shutting down.
Right.
And as the spouse of an entrepreneur, and especially when you're, home with 4 kids, doing what you can to support, because as you said, Sarah, it's our business.
Right.
This has to succeed. It affects all of us. So what can I do there? And sometimes that business can feel like a mistress because it gets so much attention. So I think you were very wise, you guys, to focus early on prioritizing your marriage. And it's probably why you're at 31 years and getting to enjoy some of the best years of your life in a beautiful space and continue to work and continue to mentor and do the things you do.
Right.
So back to 4 little kids. Now you're not working as closely, but you're focusing on your marriage. Tell us about the next piece of the business, Drew, how the business grew from there and some of the challenges, maybe one of the biggest challenges.
The challenges, obviously in life didn't stop then. They haven't stopped yet in life today.
It doesn't end at some point? Wait a minute. Maybe when we're dead.
We moved the business out of the basement, within a year and a half to 2 years after we started, launched. I think one of the biggest challenges early on in the transition, once we kind of hit bottom and re-engineered the business, rebranded, refocused on, a specific niche inside our segment of industry, really at that point was finding talent that wanted to come work for small enterprise. It's a difficult task. Capitalization when you're growing is difficult. And those were some big challenges at that stage. As we continue to grow, add employees, add customers. Certainly, I would say that the people side of it continued to be a challenge. I'd say, as in light of the work I do today and the, running and operating a business day to day, that I would say 85 to 90% of the challenges business owners, entrepreneurs face are related to people and leadership. And they invariably always point back to something as relates to leadership and dealing with people and trust and communication. And along the way had picked up a couple of minority partners through the journey that came on board that were very, talented individuals that wanted to engage in the entrepreneurial pursuit as well. And, that was a plus minus as well, had its virtues and had its challenges. In the book we wrote this past year, my business partner and I, one of the chapters was about partnerships and how they're metaphorically very similar to marriages. They need TLC, they need consistent communication, meeting together, being on the same page. And I felt like the two partners I had that were active in the business, we had pretty strong alignment, but felt like there was also some cracks that began to form, later in the journey. Those were all challenges that we faced, and I would say technology became a challenge longer term around how to scale the business, which ultimately was a big reason that we strategically decided to merge our company with one of our fellow industry counterparts, because they had some technology we felt like would allow us to really scale the business, but also enhance the long-term equity position for our organization and kind of make this leapfrog ahead 3 to 5 years. And that turned out to be a great strategy. It wasn't easy street. It wasn't roses either, and had its bumpy, turbulent times, but it was also, in the big picture, long term, probably one of the best decisions we ever chose to pursue. And that decision has paid huge dividends long term.
That was an acquisition. You were acquired by another company
that had Midwest, Kansas City, Central Time Zone region position. So Kansas City and St. Louis, and then the company we merged with was based out of Cincinnati and had a big presence in Ohio, down into Florida, and they were probably 3 to 4 times our size. So it wasn't like one big company coming in and swallowing up this little bitty fish. We were very compatible, had similar cultures. Because of some systems and technology they'd already invested in, really allowed us to jump onto a platform that allowed greater scale and expansion. It was never intended to be an exit at all. And it was also, a great way to create, I would say, a 1 + 1 = 4, 5 scenario. And really it was that. It gave our employees a chance to become, employee owners in the organization. So there's just a lot of virtues about it. It was also apparent that I kind of hit a unique crossroad in my life, and I would call it the halftime journey. And for those who are listening that have heard of the book Halftime and Bob Buford, he and I felt like I was walking alongside him as he was writing and I was reading, and so I went through this journey of halftime, and that really became an off-ramp to the day-to-day work I was engaged in there. And
what is that concept, just for people who may not be familiar with that?
Sure. I think it's something that virtually everybody goes through. The book was written really more around probably entrepreneurs and business owners who, build something and then they have an opportunity to transition. And the tagline they often used was success to significance. And I would tell you that while I agree with that idea, I go, it really is success and significance. And so a great deal of my work today is around working with business owners and entrepreneurs to help them be success and significant, leveraging their business platform for influence and impact to impact the lives of the people they shepherd and serve every day, to not only, create a great company that produces, market excellence, top line success, bottom line profitability, but enrich the storyline, get in there with God and leverage your business as a platform to have eternal impact and kingdom impact on the lives of those who you serve in your world. So, that off ramp with the outsourced HCM company allowed me to begin to pursue this kind of more purposeful journey, maybe in life. And I'm still a business owner, still an entrepreneur, different scale, different target audience for sure, and yet it's very satisfying because the men and women I work with are running companies that influence, countless hundreds of and thousands and millions of people through ultimately their customer and the ripple effect of the organizations they lead.
So Sarah, fill us in on what you were focusing on as these things shifted, like when the company was acquired, and what do you remember thinking or feeling about that shift?
I was mostly just at home doing kid duty and, involved in volunteering, PTO, booster club, whatever. But I do remember when he first started talking about merging the company, I was a little sad because I thought that, this is something that we started together, and I've watched him grow. And I was worried because he's not a good Indian and he would not be the top dog. And I thought, I hope this is going to work out. But also just kind of letting go of the control of what's going to happen to the company was kind of sad. I kind of mourned. It was almost a death in a way. But
and were you able to express that to Drew, your concerns?
I don't know if I did I?
Yeah, we talked a lot about it.
I remember kind of trying to keep it to myself.
The metaphor of death being there, but certainly, Sarah's always been a fantastic voice of reason. That I think that's one of the major blessings from our marriage. Is just the rationale and reasoning she offers when I've got some harebrained entrepreneurial idea or shiny object syndrome that I'm chasing some new innovation or creative new idea, and it's like, okay, seriously, reel that back in, cowboy.
But I do. Go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering, Drew, do you present all of those ideas to Sarah, or are there 10 ideas for every one that you say, hey, what do you think about this, Sarah?
Yeah, do you?
What's going on in there?
I do. I would, I think I generally try to get Sarah's perspective on ideas that might be certainly out there. Do really value her perspective on, sort of the reality, the sniff test, the litmus test, whatever you call it.
Right. Yeah. I was going to share that, I thought things were going along so smoothly and great, and we were happy. And then, this opportunity came along, and it's like, okay, let's do it. So we merged, and it became apparent after a year and a half, that in order for Drew to really feel like he had an impact on this company, we were going to have to move to Cincinnati. And we had kids in grade school and middle school, and one just starting high school, and they didn't want to move. All my family was there. His family was in Kansas City. Nobody really wanted to move. So it became apparent that he was going to probably step out of the business. He was still on the board of directors, but he was probably going to step out of the business. And I will say that I felt like our marriage kind of suffered when you left our business, because he almost became depressed and like, what do I do now? But I think the Bob Buford thing really kind of gave you some insight.
A lot of entrepreneurs have a tremendous amount of identity wrapped up in their role as the CEO, president, business owner, whatever you want to call it. And I certainly had that. I still have that syndrome. And I think it's this feeling of needing to be in charge. There's this alpha characteristic.
A little bit of empty nest of a business.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So that, there was kind of this desolate desert-like journey for a few years, actually.
Oh, wow. So just quickly for a time context, when did you step out of the business? When was that? We
merged in 2006. I stepped out in early 2008, kind of right ahead of the recession. And so always felt the timing of that was pretty virtuous. We maintained ownership in the company, but let go of my day-to-day role. As Sarah said, I was on the board. I was on the board for 8 years until we had a recap event in 2014. And at that time, stepped down. Today, we still have a stake in the company. So there's this, this legacy has continued to carry on with our involvement as stockholders, but nothing day to day. When I left in 2008, Sarah's mom went through a health crisis and ultimately passed later that year. So it was just kind of a season where it felt like I was hanging on. And it was kind of a valley because, now kind of let go of this identity and this business platform and this, place that I'd been able to really exercise my leadership and exert that, skill in the world of commerce. And now I wasn't really engaged in anything that resembled that. And Sarah was very involved day to day with her mom's health issue. And so I kind of went from, Mr. Important Business Guy to, let's shuttle the kids
Mr.
to and
Mom.
from soccer dad. And it might not have been a great role, but
I bet your kids loved it.
I'm not sure because I'm not sure
Maybe
my
not.
best personality during
We'll do an interview with the kids one day.
Yeah, I don't know that soccer dad and one who I've had to learn to not exert my coaching perspective
Everywhere.
Immediately upon leaving the practice field or game field. Just got to say, I loved watching you play.
Well, and what you're describing is a bit of a renegotiation of the marriage. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that ahead of time, that who you are as a couple the day you marry is not who you are 10 years later or 15 years later or pre-kids, raising kids, empty nest. I wrote a post one time called My 5 Husbands and about kind of the 5 different men that I've been married to. What, Drew?
Sure, Mark appreciated that.
Yes. But they were all the same man, and I have changed. And how boring if we aren't growing and evolving. But again, do we find ourselves suddenly, 20 feet apart? Or can we be intentional about, okay, we are in a different season. Drew, you're not working. Sarah, you are in a huge caretaking and hard role, caring for your mother. One with no regrets, I'm sure, but still very hard while you're still raising kids.
Right. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about, were there some intentional conversations? And if not, if you had a do-over of that time, what, if anything, would you do differently to strengthen your marriage and that shift?
I think there were intentional conversations. Bless Drew's heart, because I'm kind of an oblivious person. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go do the, I would get the kids ready for school, drop them off at school, and I'd run to my mom's, either in the hospital, wherever she was, trying to help. And then Drew would have to pick him up and kind of get dinner going. And I'd roll in late in the evening and thinking, okay, I'm just going to fall in bed and do it all over again the next day. And I was, this
survival.
And Drew was just getting so frustrated, but he would, at least instead of just letting it fester, he'd be every once in a while, okay, we need to talk. We have to talk about the huge elephant in the room between us and kick him out. And they were hard conversations. Mm-hmm. And it's not like we ever really came to a different solution, because it was like, this is a season I have to go through. And bless my mom's heart, she only lasted 10 weeks. So those 10 weeks seemed like eternity, though, while we were going through them. But in the scheme of things, it was a short period of time. But so we didn't really change anything. But I think just getting off of your chest how you were feeling and kind of opening my eyes to what you were going through helped the marriage, helped the relationship.
Yeah, I went back, back to that kind of the block and tackle, like got to communicate, got to connect, carve out intentional time together.
Mm-hmm.
This, very, tragic season in your mom's life, and we've got a family, and our lives will go on, and we've got to, kind of battle through this and serve your mom, and we've got to make sure that we come out of this healthy.
Yeah, that is a rough time.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it was Sarah said 10 weeks, which was really from prognosis to passing, but it was really longer than that because there was some health challenges that led up to it. So it was about a 6-month season, and it was just hard, and it was hard. And I would tell you, just being very transparent, I was a bit resentful because I had just kind of entered this season of, wow, I can't wait to do stuff and go places, and I got an open calendar, I got some cash in the bank, and we can do some things with life to go, celebrate this, gift, if you want to call it that. And it went from kind of wide open playing field to this very, very narrow swim lane of literally kind of being soccer dad, just felt. And I would share with you just transparently, unhealthy bitterness that sort of built up during this time. And it, shame on me. And it's really kind of been a source of embarrassment because, what was at stake was Sarah's mom's health and life. And that was
Sarah being torn in so many different directions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what would you do differently? What?
You're talking to Sarah, because I always ask Sarah what she needs to do differently.
Going back, I don't know. Because I have no regrets. I have no remorse. I don't feel guilty that I didn't spend more time.
I think Kathy was asking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You're off the hook here, Sarah.
I need to confess. I think what I would have done, I tried to do, was be more mindful that in the big long-term scheme of things, in the big picture, it's all going to work out according to his plan, and just, be more servant-hearted, be less self-focused. Yeah, this isn't exactly how you thought it was going to happen, but embrace the reality, and let go of your preconceived notions for what this season in life was going to look like.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, Drew.
And that's long term,
Yeah. And again, I think
we just laid my mom to rest in March, and the last, especially probably 6 months of her life, were not a bed of roses either. It was just, it was terrible, just a terrible journey to watch her go through, because it was so not what she wanted to endure. Right. And you just kind of have to embrace it and just know it's temporal, and
grief is a journey, and
honor your parents. Right?
Layered over that has been this time of quarantine where you haven't been able to gather with family.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you this, thankfully, and we count this a major blessing. Nobody, certainly wants the timing of a loved one to the passing and relative timing of a loved one to happen, certain intervals, but she passed on March 7th. We were able to lay her to rest publicly on the 14th, and then the doors came, the windows all shut, and she was in a senior care facility, and obviously the doors were shut on those not too long after that. So we would not have been able to go in and visit her, and she would have passed without any of us being able to be by her side. So it's just, God's hand was all over the timing. Yeah. And when you really look at world events as relates to this micro family situation.
Mm-hmm. But everyone's journey is important. Well, I do appreciate your honesty there, Drew, because I think it is, we are human and we're not perfect. And there are a lot of families that are facing, like you said, just monumental change that no one anticipated. Some of us are having to shift roles. Dads are having to take over maybe what mom was doing because mom has the job. So I think, hearing about other couples who have shifted. And I think that is a key to a healthy marriage. One of the keys. You've talked a lot about communication, but also the ability to pivot, to be flexible and not rigid about, well, you're the woman, so you're going to cook every night. Why? We're a team.
Made breakfast today.
That's true.
Drew did make breakfast, he said. Yeah. I appreciate so much all the positive things in your marriage. You've talked about date nights. Y'all did that early on, and I think that's so important. Are there any other tools you've picked up? Do you go to marriage retreats? Do you read books? How have you learned to communicate well?
I was going to say, I think early on in our marriage, we had read a couple of books. What's the His Needs, Her Needs?
Yeah.
We read that. And, that was, I think, the first time we realized, we do come at it from different angles. We do have different needs.
She's weird, I'm normal.
Exactly. And so we did try to communicate or try to speak to each other in their, I guess, love language. That's what.
Yeah, we did the 5 love languages material is just timeless. And, when opportunities to do some sort of a marriage enrichment or marriage retreat have come up, we've taken, we don't, it's not like we do one every year, but especially if it involves some other friends and couples that we admire and, if they represent a healthy marriage, that we do that. In the business owner CEO community that I lead now, we make marriage enrichment a fairly regular part of a gathering of our owners to really kind of place a emphasis around how important that is. Kind of what you spoke of earlier, Kathy. Don't give up marriage and the importance of this in light of running a business too, because this is the one that's going to last and have the legacy impact on future generations of your family. And
we've planned some marriage retreats for our community, which is even more helpful, I think, because you're really thoughtfully thinking about what kind of activities, what kind of good, what are you going to put in the goodie bag? I mean, you're just really thinking about marriage a lot. And I think it was even more beneficial to plan one and execute one than going to one.
Yeah.
Oh, so you planned it? You guys planned it?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
We planned them for our CEO communities and put a few on. And
we don't, normally we bring in somebody, like a Kathy and Mark Rushing to come in and execute the content, facilitate the good kind of the meat, but hosting it, putting it on, making it a good experience. That's the part we've had a role in, and it makes you look inwardly at what would we want to experience? How would we want to, what would make this enjoyable and for us if we're going to invest this kind of, capital and time to go engage as couples.
Right. And it's never just like a once and done, but I really look at marriage as just something, it's a beautiful, living, evolving organism. And we have to nurture it consistently, just like a plant. We don't stick it in the corner and expect to come back a year later and it still have beautiful blooms on it. It won't. It has to be watered. We need to know the right environment for that plant. And so is marriage. And two people who learn how to become us instead of me and you. It's not a battle, but it's creating an us.
Right. And you're right, because it's constantly changing. Like you talked about your blog, My 5 Husbands, because he's always changing. I'm always changing. So the dynamic's always changing. So yeah, you do have to continually work on it.
Yeah. Any parting words that you all would like to share having to do with entrepreneurship, marriage, family, life?
Just having been asked to officiate a wedding and then engage with, our kids and some legacy planning activities, that I think in light of what we see in our world today, just with some of the chaos going on and so forth, but I just encourage couples to engage in 1 Corinthians 13 and dive in and take a look at what love is and what love isn't, and then really internalize that, because it's even as I was sharing at my mom's funeral service, we unpacked this, because she really, to me, epitomized love more than anybody except Sarah in my life. And just her, so many of the traits of what love is. Love is patient, love is kind, love is truthful, love protects, love trusts, love hopes, love perseveres. Love's not envious, it's not boastful, it's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, and it doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Love never fails, right? So love is not. And if we really owned those in our lives and lived those out, so many of the problems in our lives would go away. So many relational problems in our marriage, with our kids, with our peers, would go away. I take that to a macro level, or world events would wash away. And so that's a big one. And then I think the last advice I would give, and I've given this to countless business leaders, is pray together with your wife. Pray together with your spouse every day. Don't let the sun go down on the anger that may be harbored in your life. Let God get in there. When two people pray together, it brings you, think a triangle with the husband and wife being on the opposite ends of the triangle. When you pray together, you're praying with God, and that brings you together at the top of that triangle. And when you do that, it really forces you to engage in what love is and what love is not. You can't harbor bitterness, no matter how mad you might be at your spouse at that moment. It's pretty difficult to do it with genuine authenticity when God's being asked to engage in that prayer with you guys together.
So powerful. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart, and for this redo. And if listeners want to reach you, how should they reach you?
So the business that my business partner and I run is called Acumen, and the website is acumenimpact.com. So my email is kind of follows suit, and it's drew.hiss, and the last name is spelled HISS, drew.hiss@acumenimpact.com. And Sarah also has an email affiliated with our company. She's got some various entrepreneurial duties she conducts and handles for a company, but hers is sarah.hiss, and it's Sarah with an H, sarah.hiss@acumenimpact.com.
Wonderful. Great. I will put all of that in the show notes, and look forward to seeing you guys hopefully soon. Take care.
Absolutely, Kathy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening through to the end. You can always find a full transcript at my website, kathyrushing.com. That's Kathy with a K, rushing.com. Whether you prefer reading or are hearing impaired, this is my gift to you. Some podcasts charge for that service, but for now anyway, I publish the full transcript for free. If you haven't subscribed yet, you can also do that on my website or through your favorite podcast platform. And one more thing before we go. If you ever have questions about your marriage or business, you can email me at info@kathyrushing.com. Mark loves mentoring entrepreneurs, so he'll be the one to answer your business questions, but we would love to hear from you. You're building a life together. Make it a great one. See you next time.